Hey everyone and welcome to SimpliCode's YouTube channel. And I hope you guys already know that we are covering every topic of JavaScript this week. We covered the basics of JavaScript and some introductory topics like variables, control statements, and looping concept. If you haven't checked out the first part, we highly recommend you to go through that video before moving ahead. In this video, which is part 2 of our full JavaScript course series, we'll cover more intermediate topics like the scope of variables and string methods in JavaScript. We also learn how to work with arrays and different objects like date object and math object and how constructors work in JavaScript. Finally, we see how object-oriented programming concepts are implemented in JavaScript like inheritance and encapsulation using classes. But did you know that if you subscribe to SimpliCode and hit the bell icon, you will immediately be notified when we drop part 3 of this full course series? Just a healthy tip. Meanwhile, let's get started with today's session.
We already know that JavaScript is a loosely typed scripting language, right? That means we don't need to specify the data types every time. So a variable is basically a container that can store data values. Those values can be changed whenever needed. In this video, we are going to discuss the scope of variables in JavaScript. So what does this scope mean in variables? So scope refers to the life of a program. There are of variables present in JavaScript, local variables and global variables. Depending upon where we are creating a variable may have two different types of scope. So let's have a look at these two different types of variables with the help of examples. Let's say we are creating a variable here. Let's say we are creating a variable where a and the value of a will be 5. So we have created a variable here and let's print the value of this variable in the browser. So what we'll do, we'll print this value in the browser. So let's print the value of this variable on the browser. So here we have printed the value of variable a. So here you can see the value is 5. So we can print the value of this variable anytime and anywhere in our program, right? So if we try to copy this line from here and we'll paste it somewhere else in a program, let's say we are pasting it here. If we try to save it now, see, here you can see that we have two values of a because we have printed a twice here, right? Once we have used this a here, then we have used a here. So here you can see we have two values of a, 5 and 5. So this variable a is a global variable, which means its life is available throughout the entire script we can. And when we declare a variable inside a function, that variable is known as a local function. So let's try to do it as well. We already know what functions we saw in the previous video, right? So what we'll do, we'll make a function here. Let's say we are creating a function my function, opening and closing round bracket and the body of the function, right? So let's declare a variable here. Let's say we are using a variable where x and the value of x will be 10, right? Let's try to print this value. So we have created a function here. Now we are left with the function call only. So let's call the function here. What we'll do, we'll call my function, right? Save it. And now here you can see the output is 10, 5 and 5. So if we comment these three lines, remove these three lines and we'll save it now. So here output is 10 only. So this variable x declared inside a function, it is a local variable because if we try to access this variable from outside the possible. So let's cut this, let's try to paste it here. So now what we are trying to variable from outside the function. Let's save it now. Let's save there is no output in the browser because a local variable can be accessed only in that function. We can't access it from of the function because as soon as the function is executed, the gets destroyed, means there is no variable present in the memory now. The same thing applies to the memory. Whenever we run a JavaScript program, the whole browser is present in the RAM, or we can say in the memory. So these local variables are created only till the function is executing. Once the function is done running, the same function wipes out of the memory. Whereas the case is different for global variables. So global variables are available throughout the script. They have a global lifetime, which means that they will exist throughout the program's running. Or we can say until the tab is open. The next exciting thing about global variables is we can access global variables from inside the function. What we'll do, let's cut this line from here and we'll declare a variable here. Let's say variable where y, and the value of y will be 15. This line, paste it again. Now what we will do, we'll try to access y from inside the function. So let's see the output here is 10 and 15. 10 is the value of x variable for function my function, because we have declared x inside the function. Whereas variable y is a global variable. We have declared it outside the function and we tried to access it from inside of the function, right? So we tried to access y here and we can see the value of y is 15, which is printed on the browser. This is what global variables are. One more exciting thing I want to mention at the end of this video is if we declare any variable in JavaScript without using the where keyword. So if we try to declare a variable here, let's say we are declaring, okay, we have not used any where keyword. So what we are doing is we are declaring a variable and the value of var1. So we don't need the where keyword separately when we are declaring a variable. However, some of the newer have some sort of try to declare a variable inside this function without using the where keyword. So let's try to access this variable. To access, let's write the function. Okay, what we'll do is we'll declare this variable inside the function and we'll comment this line, and what we'll do is we'll try it from outside the we'll write here, save this. If you don't understand it, let me change the value of var1, this value to 20, save it now and see the output here is 10 and 20. So var1 is a variable which is declared without using the where keyword, right? So we can access this variable from outside the function as well. Any variable which is declared without using where keyword is a global variable. Keep this thing in mind, guys. We know that strings in any programming language are used to store and manipulate textual value. A string contains a sequence of characters, double quotes. So let's declare a string here. Let's say we have a variable and we have a variable as var x, and this will be a basic string, hi there as the value. Next thing, we'll print document.write and x on a browser. So this here is a string that holds a textual value. So we find the type of the variable x. So hope you guys are aware of that. If you're not, then please go through the previous video on data types in JavaScript. Let's print this value on browser first. So here you can see it says hi there. So this is a string, and let's try to determine the type of variable x, and we'll see if it returns a string or something else. We'll do it with the help of type of operator, right? I hope you guys remember that. So let's try to use type of operator here, and here we'll use type of x. So let's save it and see. Here you can see we have a string as the type of variable x. So strings are helpful for holding that can be represented in textual form. So let's move on to and this skip sequence in JavaScript. So if you noticed that in the previous few videos we use a lot of HTML in JavaScript, right? For example, we use the heading so often. Like when we are using the document.write to print anything on the browser, we use heading out, right? So the thing to notice here is that these tags behaves as HTML tags, right? right? We use them in commas just like strings, but they still act like HTML tags. So let's understand this with the help of an example. What we'll do is we'll remove this code. We'll print a simple statement in a browser. So we'll use document.write and we'll write here hi there, and we'll use a tag, right? So a basic HTML tag we are going to use. Let's say we are using the break tag. I hope you all are aware of the break tag. So the next sentence will be so here in this example we tried to print a sentence and we are using the BR printed on the browser. So we are using the break tag in between the hi there and we have welcome to SimpliCode. So we use this in a string, right? So the output what we were expecting was hi there and the BR should be written in string, but there's a difference in the output, right? The BR tag is actually functioning as an HTML tag. So here the break tag works the same as it did for HTML. So we can conclude that if we try to infuse any HTML tag inside the JavaScript statement, it will act as. So let's move on and we'll look at some other characters present in JavaScript. So let's say we want to print this line. Okay, we'll edit this one only. So what we will do is we'll remove this break tag and suppose we want to print this on a screen. So we want this on our screen and we want the welcome to be inside the double inverted comma in output as well. So if we try to run this program now, there will be nothing in the browser. Let's try to check if it gets any error. So it says error. It says missing after the argument list. So how to print this on the browser? We want to highlight the word welcome. So if we try to run this program as it's not. To do this type of task, we have the character. To print the double quotes inside, we use a single backslash inverted comma. The syntax is we have to use the double inverted comma. So now in this on browser, see it says hi there and welcome is written within double inverted commas, right? That's how you can print this on a screen. Next up, if we want to use a single inverted comma, well, backslash with a single inverted comma. So just like we did here with the double inverted comma, similarly we can do it for single inverted comma as well. We'll do is we'll copy this document and we'll print it here. So here what we will print is we'll print here it's alright. Okay, so we are using a backslash with a single inverted comma. Now we'll write a S. The output will be it's all. So we have to use them because we need them in a program at times, right? So to avoid any confusion, one must know how to use this sequence script. Let's save this and see. If we try to comment this line, let me to make it more easier for you to understand. Let's save it now and see. It says it's alright. You can't print it's in similar way without using the backslash escape character. Lastly, if we want to put a backslash in our string, if we want to put a backslash, we want to show it in the browser. So the syntax for that will go like, we have the document.write, right? So here we will write the character and we'll use two backslashes. It's called backslash. So let's try to print this. So here one thing, only a single backslash is printed on the browser. The first one is used as a backslash and the second one which will be printed on the browser. Few more escape sequence present in JavaScript, like or we can say new line. We don't use them quite often. I'll let you know if we use them in future. So for now it's enough for escape sequences present in JavaScript. Let's move on, and now we'll go through the different string methods present in JavaScript. So there are several string methods present in JavaScript. We are going to discuss a few in this particular video, and so here you can see it on your screen now. Methods present in JavaScript. The first one here, that is length, it is a property, and the rest are string method. Start this video with property. You can pause the video to note down all the string methods, or you can just take a screen. So let's move on to the programming part. Now the length property is used to find the actual length of a string. So to find the length of a string, let's declare a string first, and then we'll find out the length of that string. So the statement will go like this. We have a variable str, and the value of str will be, let's say, welcome to SimpliCode. Okay, so here we have a string, and we have a variable a which holds the length of this string, right? So this str.length is a property of string, and it will return the actual length of this string. So what we'll do is we'll print document.write value of a, because the variable is the actual length of string str. So let's, and here you can see the output is 21. So if you count the number of characters present in this particular string, it will come out as 19. 7 for welcome, 2 for 2, and 10 for SimpliCode, right? So are 19. So the remaining 2 are the spaces present between welcome and 2, this one space, and the other space is this. The total comes out to be 21. So this is how the length property of string works. If we want to find out the number of characters present in a string, we can simply use the str.length property, and it will give us the exact number of characters including spaces as well. So next up, we have the two methods which are two lowercase and the two uppercase method. This two lowercase method is quite simple to use. The functionality of this method is it can change the whole string to lowercase characters irrespective of what in the string. So let's try this method and you can understand it. So here what we'll do is we'll replace this str.length with dot two lowercase changed here. So let's try to run this. You can see each of the characters present in the string is changed to lower alphabet. So you can see we have W case. So what we'll do is we'll write welcome in uppercase here. Let's say we have welcome, and now we'll save it. So here you can see the welcome is also in lowercase. So every character present in the string is converted to lowercase. The case with two uppercase is a bit different. So if we try to write here two uppercase, and now if we run this program, so every character present in the string will be changed to uppercase letter. So here you can see we have in lower cases. Now here in the output it is changed to uppercase letters. If you guys note, we used the length property previously, right? But we didn't use the opening and closing round brackets there. But we are using them with uppercase and lowercase methods, right? It's the difference between property and methods. Next up, this method. So this function method is used to find something particular in our program. So this function either returns true or false. If we want to check if a particular word is available in a string or not, we can use the includes method. So this is a case sensitive method, which means that it differentiates between uppercase and lowercase letters. So let's try this function here, and we will search for a word here. Let's say we are searching for 2, right? So instead of uppercase, we are writing here includes and we are looking for 2. So 2 here exists in a sentence, right? It exists in a string. So it will return true. Let's save it and check the output. See, it says true. But if we try to think like, let's try to find here from, and we'll save it. If we try to, like, we try to find here code, save it, and it says true because code exists in string. But if see, it says false because it is a case sensitive method, right? Next up, we have the starts with and ends with function. So these are used to check the initial and final words present in JavaScript. For example, let's try to use here starts with first. What we'll do, instead of includes, we'll write here starts with, right? It will return false for any value other than welcome or W, whatever we are writing. So if we write here anything other than this welcome, it means that we can write here W, WEL, WELCOME, or we can write here WELC. Anything other than that, let's say. And see, it says false. Why? Because if the sum matches the first word, if we try to write here welc, okay, so these are the 4 initial letters of a string. Let's save it now, and now we can see that it says true, because if the searched item matches the first word, then only it will return true, otherwise the value will be false. See, here it returned false for 2, and for WELC it returned true. The same goes for the ends with method. So let's try to use ends with instead of, and here we'll try code. So here what we'll do is, instead with, we'll write here and know that the last 4 characters of code, right? So we'll write here code, or write here simply, and it says false because it is checking for the last 4 words. So if we write here SimpliCode, return true only if the last 4 letters are included, which are present in the string. So if we write here code instead of SimpliCode, then also it will return true because codes are the last 4 letters or characters present in SimpliCode, right? Next up, we have the search function. So the search function works almost the same as includes method. The only difference between these two is the include method returns the boolean value, meaning if it finds out that the word is present in the string, it will return either true or false, right? The case is slightly different for the search method. It returns the exact position of the word if the word exists in the string, else it returns -1 as the answer. So find out the word to, or we can change the string here. So we are going to use a different string. Let's say we are using this string, right? So we'll copy it from here and we'll paste it here, but we'll not use this / sign. So let's try to use here the search method, and what we'll try to find out in this string is, let's say we have to find out, okay, so we have the is in a string. So let's save it and see, it says 14. 14 is the index number of is. It starts from 0, like 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, and at number 14 is present. So it will print 14 on the browser. That's how we can use the search method in JavaScript. So next up, we have the index of method used to find the index of a particular word. So let's try to use the index of method now. So what will happen is, as soon as it finds the word is, it will return the, right? So if we try to write here of is, and we'll save 14 because we know 14 is also returned by the search method because they both are doing the same thing actually. So if we try to write here, instead of writing here called 17, so 14 was I, 15 and then space at 16, and from 17 called is started. So it will return the index number, index value of that word. If we have two similar words present in a string, let's suppose we have an is here as well, right? So we have two is now, and or we can say called, we have two called, right? So save it, then also it will return 17 because as soon as it finds out that the word called is present in the string, it will print that on the browser. It won't check for other word, other similar word. It won't check for the second called. So the search and the index of methods works almost the same. The following method we are going to use is the last index of method. It works the same as the index of. The only difference is if we try this last index of method, it will start checking from the last. So the output will be a little bit different. So let's try to find out the output and then we will check. It says 7. Try to check it from here. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17. So here you can see it says 17 because when it started checking, it will start checking from the last of the string. So that's why we are using here last index of, and we know the working of this method as well. Till now we came across a lot of string methods and we have a lot more string methods still remaining. So we'll go through them at once. Let me take you through them at once before we end this video. So here is the list of all the remaining functions. Let me take you through all of them one by one. The first function here is the replace function. See, we have the replace keyword here. So this is a new function we are going to discuss about. So replace function is used to replace some. For example, in this first replace here to with from. Right? So how to use the replace function, and what we did is we replaced the word to with from. So this to from here, save it now. So here you can see from simple word to with from. So here I have taken two examples. That's because if we write here to once, so let's save it now. Here you can change the first two only. It has two similar words, right? It has two here, it has two here as well. So what it did is it changed the first two, but the second two is still the same. So that's why I have used this example here. This is the basic syntax using which it will search for the word globally and change it every time it finds the word. So we'll discuss about it in later videos. For now, you can see if we use this globally, what's happening is when it traverses the string, it will find the word is twice and it will change the word is to from, right? So here you can see we have two similar words. We have is here and here changed in the output. So that's how the replace. Let's move on to our next function. Next up we have the concat method. So we'll remove it and now we'll have a look at the concat method. So the concat method is used to concatenate two strings basically. So here you can see we have two strings. We have var str2 and we have var str3. The value var str2 holding is JavaScript was developed by Brendan Eich, and the other string is in the year 1995. So this is the syntax of how we concatenate two strings. So here you can see we have concatenated string 3 to string 2. So string2 dot concat and in bracket whatever string we want to concat. If we want to concatenate more than one string, then also we can use it here. We can write here comma and the other string. So the output will be like this. It says JavaScript was developed by Brendan Eich in the year 1995. So that's how method works. let's move on to our following string method, which is the split method. So as the name suggests, split means to break the string into pieces. So let's remove it from here, and now what we'll do is we'll comment it from here. Now we'll go through the split method. So the split method is used to break a string into pieces. The syntax is quite simple. We have to write the string name dot split, and what it will do is it will put a comma in place of every space, because if we want to split some, let's say we want to write here instead of space, right? So it will traverse the string, and every time it finds an I, it will put a comma instead of that I. So let's save it now and see. Here it says JavaScript, here in place of I, a comma. So similarly from Brendan Ike, I with a comma. So that's how the split function works. So if we use here space instead of I or anything else, let's save it now. See, instead of every space, a comma is inserted. JavaScript comma was comma developed. So that's how the split function works. Next up, we have the repeat method, right? So we'll remove it and we'll go through the repeat method. So repeat, as the name suggests, it will repeat the string. So the syntax is as usual, similar like the other syntaxes. So we have a string here str5 and the value similar. JavaScript was developed by Brendan. So the repeat method is used if we want to repeat a string n number of times. Like here we have written here 5. It's printed 5 like, and then again it's printed forth till 5, right? So the repeat function is used if we want to print a number of times basically. Next up, we have the slice method in string. So the slice method parts of a string and returns the extract string. So let's go through the slice method. So what slice method? Here you can see it uses the start and the end parameters to specify the part of the string extract. So here you can see we have given two parameters as 5 and 10 in the browser, because it started index value 0 and went till. So when it was at number 5, the present at number 5, it will start from there and it will print till 10. So C is the value present at number 5. If we count from here 0, 1, 2, 3, 4. C is the value present at 5 and it will print till 10 because T is present at number 10, right? So it will print crypt on the browser. So if we try to do something else here, let's say we are using here 12 and we'll take it through 30. Save it now. It says as developed by BR. So A is number 12 and number 30. So the slice function works in string, and if we want to use the values, we can, it will print the string from the end. Like if we write here mind the last two characters of the string. So let's try to write here -2. See, it says ch. It will print the last two characters of the string. Next up, we have the substr method. So it works the same as the slice function. The only difference is in the parameters. So in the slice method, we give the two parameters. It starts from the first one and goes till the second parameter. But in the substr method, it starts from the first parameter and prints the number of characters mentioned in parameter 2. So let's try to understand this with the help of an example. So here you can see we have this string JavaScript was developed by Brendan Ike, and the parameters are 5 and 10. So the same parameters we have taken for the slice method. So what will happen is it will start from 0, it will go till 5. So v is present at 5, right? So what it will start from 5 and it will print the next 10 characters. So the printing till 10, but the substr will print the next 10 characters from index value 5. Let's save it and see. It says JavaScript was. So there are 10 characters which will be printed on the browser, because that's the only difference between substr and slice function. I hope you guys can spot the difference between slice and substr method. Right, next up we have the substring method, which works the same as the slice method. The difference is it will start from the first parameter and goes till the second parameter, but it won't include the character present at the second parameter. So if we start it from 5 and we want to save it, can't do it this way. Let's make it a 9. Why 9? Because at number a space is available, so it's right. So let's save it now and see. It says CRIP. So C is present at 5, R is present at 6, I is present at 7, and P is present at 8. So T is present at 9, so it will not print T, because that's the only difference between substring and the slice function. Both starts from the first parameter, both goes till the second parameter, but the slice function includes the second parameter you present at second, whereas the substring leaves the second parameter. So the basic definition of array states that it's a collection of elements stored in contiguous memory locations. So array of similar type of elements, or in JavaScript, array acts a bit different from other programming languages. We can discuss it later. So let's understand the concept of arrays with the help of an example. We'll move to the programming part directly. Let's consider a scenario where we have a collection of similar types of variables. Suppose we have a list of cars. Let's create a small list here for a few different car companies. Let's say we have a variable where car1, and the value of car1 will be Honda. Okay, and then we have another variable, and the value of car2 will be Kia. And finally we have a variable, let's say, where car3, and value of car3 will be Ford. So here we have taken 3 different car manufacturers. We have Honda, we have Kia, and we have Ford, and we have 3, right? So print all 3 of them. What we have to use the document.write method, right? So document.write again and again for this small piece of code, right? Let's print the value of all. Let's say we are using document.write, and we will print the value of all 3 variables. So here we have printed the value of all 3: car1, the value of Honda, here we have Kia, and we have Ford as well. So this task is a bit simple for this small piece of code, right? If we have 100 values here instead of just 3 values, or maybe have 1000 values in a list, we can't follow the same procedure in that case, right? That's where arrays come into play. What we can do is we can use a single variable, and we can store as many values as we want inside a single variable. By doing this, we don't have to access each and every variable separately while printing them. The data types of those values present inside the array does not matter at all. So we can save either numbers or strings or a value with any data type. We'll discuss it in a moment. Let's try to define an array here first. So the syntax for array goes like this. We have to take a variable. Let's say we declare an array here. Let's say we are taking a variable where car, and these opening and closing square brackets represent the array. It means that it is an array if we are using inside this. We can use double quote want to insert. It will go like this. Let's suppose we have 3 values here, right? We'll use these 3 values only, Kia and Ford. So to insert these 3 values, so let's say we have the first manufacturer as Honda, the next one we have is Kia, and the last one we have is Ford, right? So we have all the 3 values here present inside a single variable. So we have a single variable where car, and we have all the three values. We have Honda, we have Kia, and we have Ford. So we can insert as many values as we want. Like if we have a list of 100 car manufacturers, we can insert them in this array. Now let's print the output of this array. So the output will go like, we will copy document.write from here, paste it here, and the output will go like this. So we don't need this piece of code right now. So we'll comment this so that we can understand the difference between these two codes. And now let's save this program and see. Here you can see we have all the three elements of the array. We have Honda and we have Ford. So an array is a non-primitive data type or composite data type with one single name and can hold multiple values. Here the array name is car and it stores three similar values, right? Here we have three string values. We have Honda, Kia and Ford. So this array can store any number of values we want to store in that array. So what if we want to print a single value from these three values we have? We have Honda, Kia and Ford, right? So if we want to print Kia, let's suppose. So it's easy to print this on a browser. All we need to know is the index number of that value. So the index number in the case of arrays starts from 0, goes further. Values here as we can see. So the index value for will be, so for Honda the index value will be 0, Kia the index value will be 1, and for Ford the index value will be 2. So the index value starts from 0 and goes on. So one thing to keep in mind, guys, whatever number of values an array is holding, the last index value one less than. So as here you can see, we have three values. Index number of the last value will be 1. It means the index number will be 2 because the index number starts from 0. Let's try to access the element present at index 1. So we have Kia here, right? All we have to do is we have to put square brackets here in the doc. Here we have to put square brackets and we have to write the index value inside of these square brackets. So if we write here 1 and if we save, so here you can see we have Kia only. It will print the element present index number 1. So here in this particular, we can also using the index values. Let's say we want to print each element, right? So we can use the loop here. I hope you guys are aware of the for loop by now. We'll write here. So we have declared an array. So we will use the for loop here and we will print here. We'll take a variable I and the value of I will be, initial value will be 0. And then we'll give the condition. The condition will be I less than 3 because we know there are 3 values only and it will go till 2 only because it's going for the index value. And the final condition will be I plus plus. So here we'll use the curly braces because this is the syntax for loop, and the I value will iterate through the array and print all the values present at indexes till the index 2. So the same thing goes for 100 elements as well. We can use the for loop to access all the 100 elements in separate lines. So guys, if we save this and here you can see, okay, it is printing Kia, Kia and Kia because we have particularly mentioned here cars present at index 1. So we have to remove 1 here and we'll save it now. So the right syntax we will write here I, and if we save it now, so we have all the 3 values. Here you can see, guys, the I value here will iterate through the array and print all the values present at indexes till the index 2. So the same thing goes for 100 elements as well. We can use the for loop to access all the 100 elements present in the array. We can use the same iteration concept for doing so. So guys, there's another way to represent an array in JavaScript. It goes like this. let's say we have a variable. This time we'll take the variable as fruits. So the syntax will be like new. We have to use the new keyword, and then we will use new array, and we have to give a space here, and the elements we want to store inside the array. So we'll use a apple, then we have, let's say, banana, and finally we have, let's say, mango. Okay, and we can access the elements of these array with the help of a for loop. We can use the similar for loop here. So if we copy this for loop and we'll paste it here. Instead of cars, we'll use a fruits. Give the value as to iterate I through each. We have once again the index value as 0 for apple, 1 for banana, and 2 for mango. Let's comment this program as well so that it will be easy for you guys to understand. Let's save this program now and see, we have the list of all the elements present at array fruits. So we have apple, we have banana, and we have mango printed on our browser. So this way of array representation or declaration is less recommended, because the other way which we discussed earlier, like when we discussed the car manufacturers, so that way is a bit easier to use. So I'll recommend that way only, because this way is a bit tricky as well. So let's move on to our next topic of discussion. So if you know guys, arrays in JavaScript work differently when compared to other programming languages like Java and C++. So arrays in JavaScript have dynamic nature, which means we can add or remove elements from an array at runtime. Just like methods in the previous video, for arrays also we have a few methods, like if we want to add or if we want to delete an element from an array, we have the push and pop methods available to do such tasks. To add an element into an array, we use the push method, and the syntax for pushing elements into an array goes like, so we'll remove this piece of code and we'll use the first one only, the car manufacturer one. So if we want to push something inside the array, right, we'll write here the variable name dot, we use the push method, and we'll push whatever value we want to push. Let's say we are adding another car manufacturer. Let's say we are adding Nissan. We have to change the value here as well, because what will happen, we have used the condition I less than 3. So it will check for indexes till index 2 only. It won't check for index 3. So if we write here I less than 4, it's Nissan now. Let's save this and see, a new value is pushed into the array with. So let's move on and discuss the pop method. So the pop method in array removes the last present element. If we use this pop method here, it will remove Nissan in this case. So now you can see we have 4 car manufacturers present in a array. So if we use the pop option now, if we use car.pop and let's run this program and see, it says undefined. This is happening because, as you can see, we have pushed the value Nissan into an array. So an address in the memory location was reserved for that particular element. Now if we pop out that particular element, so if we try to use cars.pop once again, let's save it now and see, it removed the element Ford as well. So let's try to push one more value in this particular scenario. Let's say we are pushing a value as Hyundai, and now let's run this. So you can see here it have inserted Hyundai in place of Ford, because we have used the pop method to put Ford out. So I hope you guys understood this. These are different for arrays in JavaScript, which are already predefined to do some specific task. Like this sort method, if we write here car dot, so here are all the methods, here are all the array methods present in JavaScript. So if we use this sort method, what it will do, it will sort the array in ascending order. The array.length property So just like we had the length property in strings, so we have the property in arrays as well. The array.length property is used to find the length of the array. So if we use it in the for loop in place of this I less than 4, so here you can see we have used I less than 4. Now if we write here array.length, so if we write here car.length, so now we don't have to change this value again and again. So if we are in any value, or if we are removing any value from this for loop, so if we are removing any value from this array, so we don't have to write here 3, or we don't change it to 4 at an element. We don't have to change that value basically. We'll check for the length of the array. So the length here is, let's say we have the length here 3, right? So it will check for the length and it will be 1 less than the length of the array. So if we run this program now, it will work fine. I hope you guys understood the concept of array methods present in JavaScript. The other main difference array has in JavaScript, which makes it different from C++ or Java, is we can add elements with other data types in JavaScript. We try to use the push method to insert a numeric value here in this cars array. So we will push another value. Let's say we are pushing car.push, and this time we will push a numeric value. Let's say we are pushing here 20. So let's save it, and here you can see the value 20 is inserted inside the array car. So we can use any data type inside an array in JavaScript. Objects are the most powerful and the most used data types in JavaScript. So far seen that we can use a single variable to store a value. The value can be a string or a number or any other type of variable. After that, we have seen arrays in which we can store multiple values, like we can store lists in arrays. So let's take a scenario here, and let's say we have a piece of code. We are taking a variable, let's say where car manufacturer, and the value of this car manufacturer will be Audi, a string, right? Next up we have another variable. Let's say we have a variable car model, and the value of this will be, let's say car from Audi is Q7. Then we have another variable, let's say where price of car, and the price will be, let's say US dollars. Alright, next up we have a function. Let's say we are using, that is all-wheel drive. So we are having a function all, the opening and closing curly braces for the body of the function. Inside this wheel drive function we are using document.write, and here what we will write, let's suppose this car comes with quattro all-wheel drive. Quattro, I hope you guys are aware of this word quattro. It means that four-wheel drive. Next up we will call this all-wheel drive function here. So here's the data about a particular car from a particular brand Audi, right? So the car model is Q7 and the price of this car is 50,000 US dollars. So these are the three different things we are storing for a car of a particular brand. Next up we have a function which states the capability of the car. The function here is the all-wheel drive, which means that this car comes with four-wheel drive instead of general front-wheel drive or rear-wheel drive. So this function is the behavior of the car, right? It shows that the car is four-wheel drive. Things are pretty sorted here, right? We have the data about the car and a function associated with it. So let's save this and we can see the output here. The car comes with quattro all-wheel drive. So this is a basic piece of code, right? We have been through how to use functions. We know how it's quite easy for now, right? The problem occurs when we have a class. Let's say that we have to maintain cars with all the data. We have car model, price, and then we have different behaviors for different cars. They have the all-wheel drive property. So what we will do in such a case, that we have to use the same property again and again for 100 different cars or 100 different entities. We can copy paste this same piece of code repeatedly, and we have to change the value every time we copy paste it. So we have to change the variable name, the car manufacturer, the car model, and the price as well. Imagine we are doing this for a list of cars. Then it goes on and on. So this is the most inefficient way of tackling this problem, right? This is where the concept of objects come into play. These objects help us to bundle all these properties and attributes about one particular entity. If we talk about this particular example of a car, we can put all these properties and many other properties like car weight, we have car color, and so on together under one name and make it an object. Let's move on to the syntax for objects in JavaScript. We'll do it for this same program. We'll use objects. Now let's go ahead and have a look at the syntax for objects. So before we start, there are few ways in which we can create objects in JavaScript. We are going to discuss two different ways of doing so. The first one is the literal way, also known as the literal object way. So the syntax for literal object way goes like this. Let's say we are declaring a variable varchar and curly braces. So these curly braces represent that this car variable is object. Inside this, we will define all the car's properties, that is whatever to store about the car, like car manufacturer, car model, and price in this particular scenario. So let's use them here. So we have car manufacturer, and the car manufacturer is Audi, right? Next up we have car model. Car model is Q7. Finally we have the price, which is $50,000. So you can identify the difference here inside the object, right? When we declare a variable, we usually use the equals to sign for assignment, but here in objects we use the colon, and we are using commas here because we have some more properties. So these three are the properties. For this object car, we have three properties associated with it. We can also add this all-wheel drive function inside the object, and when we use this function inside the object, it will be called a method. Whenever we use a function inside a class or an object, so it is known as a method. Keep this thing in mind, guys. So that syntax is also a bit different when it comes to methods inside an object. The syntax, we have to write here all-wheel drive, and we'll use the colon. Then it is a function, so we'll write here function with opening and closing round brackets and the body of the function. So what we want to write here is we want this function to return the value, right? We want this function to return this value. So we'll copy it from here and we'll paste it here. So we want this function to return this value. So we'll write here return instead of document.write. Now this function will return this string that this car comes with a quattro all-wheel drive. So if you want to change this string a little bit, you can change, because we have already used this string in the previous program we did. So let's suppose we'll write here four-wheel drive. Now this will be easier for you to understand this. So this is what an object looks like. Our object is entirely ready. What we did here is we bundled all these things and coupled them. We bundled all these things. We bundled all the three variables. We bundled this function. We bundled all of them together inside a single variable. And now this particular variable car is an object. Now if we want to access these properties of the object, like car manufacturer, car model, etc., whatever properties we have here, so what we have to do is we have to use document.write. So it is quite simple. So after this object, we'll write here document.write. And to access this object, what we have to do is we have to use the object name with the dot operator. So if we want to, let's suppose car dot, and the property name will be car under manufacturer. So here is the syntax. The syntax is quite easy. You can see here we have used the car object with the dot operator, and then we have the property name, whatever property we want to access. So let's save this program now and see. Here it says Audi. by using this dot operator, we can access any property of the car. Not just a property, we can access the method as well. So if we want to access the method, like if we want to access this all-wheel drive function, we can do it simply by writing here car dot, and we'll write here instead of this, we'll write here all-wheel drive, and we are good to go. So if we save this now, so here you can see it says this car comes with 4-wheel drive. So it is quite easy to access these properties of an object. So we can do it by using this. Now suppose we call this function normally with the document.write inside the function in place of return. So if we write here document.write, it's normal, like how we normally call a function. So if we write here document.write inside this function, and we can call this function by the normal method. Like if you are calling this function from outside, what we'll do, we'll write here car dot and the function name. So if we save this now, here you can see the string is printed on the browser. This car comes with 4-wheel drive, and you can see here we didn't use any h1 tag or h2 tag, so you can spot the difference, right? So that's how you can call a method of an object from outside. This is the normal way. So now you guys might be wondering, what if we want to add more cars into this? We can copy paste it again to do so and change the value of properties again. It is the same thing we can do with the variables. So this is where the following way of creating objects come into the picture, in which we use something different known as object constructor. That's a bit different from other object-oriented programming languages. So don't worry if you don't know about it. Also, in the newer versions, JavaScript supports the concept of classes and objects. So what we used to say earlier is JavaScript is an object-oriented scripting language because it does not support the concept of classes and objects fully. But now the scenario has changed. JavaScript do support the concept of classes and objects, but we'll keep it a bit simple. So let's comment this code as well, and we'll use this code for reference. So we'll comment this, that's why we are not removing it, but we can remove this piece of code. So let's remove it, and let's move on to use a second way of creating an object. Now we will create multiple objects using a single template, which is known as a constructor function. Let's have a look at the syntax for this method. So we'll write the function keyword, and we have named this function as cars, and in parentheses we will provide the properties as parameters. So these are the properties. We have car manufacturer and we have car price. So these are the properties which we used in the previous code as well. So here we have also used these properties, so we'll keep it that way only. Now inside a function, these parameters are known as arguments. So if we talk about the naming convention, so these parameters are known as arguments. So let's move on to the body of the function, and inside the body we will use this keyword here. This keyword refers to the object it belongs to. So here in this program, this will refer to the object basically. So what we are doing here is, whenever we are creating any object using this constructor function, we will pass specific values like the car manufacturer, car model, and the price, all of these values. So all these values will be present at the RHS. So let me write this first. Let's say we are using this dot and the property name car manufacturer. We'll write here car manufacturer. So all these values will be present at the RHS, and the actual property of the object will be this dot car manufacturer. So this is the actual property of this method. You will understand it much better when we create the object. For now, let's mention here the other two properties and method as well. So let's use the other two properties, which were this dot car model, and we'll write here car model. The last one was this dot price. We'll write here price. Let's add the method here as well inside the constructor function. We'll use this keyword again to add the method. The syntax will go like this. We'll use this dot all-wheel drive, and this is a function. So we'll write here function with the opening and closing round brackets, and then we have the body of the function. Inside the body of this function we will write whatever we have written in the previous program. So we'll copy it from here and we'll paste it here. Right, so this is a complete constructor function. Now using this constructor function we can create multiple objects of this car type. So this constructor function works like a template, or like the classes work in other languages like C++ and Java. So let's create an object here. So we'll create a variable here. Let's say we are creating a variable C1. Now we'll use the new keyword and along with the constructor function. So we'll use here cars and we'll pass the values for all the three properties. So here you can say we have the car manufacturer as Audi, and next up we have the model as Q7 and the price as 50,000. Okay, so we have created a variable, we have passed the values for the properties, and now if we want to access this function, if we want to access this all-wheel drive function, we can access this as well. We have to write here c1.allwheel drive, and this is how you can call a function. If we save this program, see here it says this car comes with 4-wheel drive. So if you change anything here, let's suppose we are using here h2 tag. If we save this program now, see you can see the change here. So we are calling this function here and this will be printed on the browser. So this string will be printed on the browser. Let's create another variable here. Let's say we are using var c2, and the syntax will be same for this as well. We'll write here new cars and we'll pass the values here. So let's say we are using BMW, and next up we have the model as X7, and the price of this car is, let's say, 40,000. Okay, 40,000 USD. So if we want to access any particular property of any object, like if we want to access the car model or if we want to access the car manufacturer, so we can do it the same way as we did previously, as we did in the literal object way. So to do so, we have to write here document.write, and it was quite simple. So we have to write here the object name dot and whatever we want to print. Let's say we are printing here car model. So if we save this now, you can see here X7 is printed on the browser because X7 is the value of object C2. And let's suppose if we want to print here car manufacturer, save it and see here you can see we have BMW as the output on our browser. Similarly, we can access the price as well. Let's save it now and see here it says 40,000. So this is how we can create multiple objects in JavaScript. We'll continue with the previous program we made. So today we will use the literal object way because this method of creating objects is a bit easier than the other one we discussed, which was the constructor function method. So here we created the car object, which has three properties: car manufacturer, car model, and the price of the car. We have a method here as all-wheel drive. When we use this method here, we use this method with the dot operator and we call that function, we call that method with the help of the object. So the output was this car comes with 4-wheel drive. So this was something we did in the previous video. If we talk about objects in JavaScript, a lot of things we know about in JavaScript are basically objects, like the boolean values, numbers, strings, and a few more. So many of these things can be objects if we define them with the new keyword. Basically, any of the data type other than the null and undefined can be converted to objects, or they have their equivalent object forms if we define them with the new keyword. So we have a few predefined objects as well. We have the math object, the date object, and the regular expression are also considered objects in JavaScript. A lot of things are objects in JavaScript. We'll use objects in DOM manipulation, which we will go through in further videos. So that's why it is pretty essential to understand the whole concept of objects, right? So next up, let's look at how we can use different data types as objects in JavaScript. So the syntax for using the basic data types as objects in JavaScript goes like this. We'll declare a variable first. We have a variable str1, and next up we'll write here the new keyword and the data type. So string is our data type, which we will be using as objects for now. So this is the complete syntax of how to use a data type as an object in JavaScript. If we'll write here str1 and we'll use the dot operator, so here we can see we have the object methods as well, right? So I hope you guys are aware of the methods present in JavaScript. Like we had the string and array methods, right? We have methods for object as well, like the index of method. We have seen the use of index of method when we went through the string methods in JavaScript. So similarly, we have the font color and the length property for object as well. So length here is the property, and other which we can see are the methods for objects in JavaScript. So here this str1 becomes the object by default when we use the new keyword with the string while declaring. So there are few ways to determine if a variable is an object or a primary data type. So the easiest way to do so is to use the type of operator. So let's use it here and check the type of variable str1. We'll write here document.write and we'll print the type of this variable. So we'll use the type of operator and the type of variable str1. So let me put it inside the h1 tag. So here we have written our type of operator. So let's print this value on the browser. If we save it, see here you can see it says object. If we write a string here in place of this new string, so if we write here any string, let's suppose we are using a string here. Let's say we are using hello. Okay, let's save it now, and here you can see the type of this variable str1 changed from object to string. So this is the difference between a primitive data type. It was a string earlier, but when we use it with the new keyword along with the string, and this is the basic syntax of how to define a primitive data type as an object. So if we save it now, here you can see it is converted to object. Similarly, we can use the other basic data types as well, and the other predefined objects we talked about, like the date object and the math object, we'll go through each of them in separate videos. So moving on, let's go back to our car object. After we declared the whole object, we defined all the three properties and the method also. Somewhere in the program, we realized that we had missed a particular property, and we realized it after we have written 150 lines of code after this car object. So here you can say we have written here 150 line of code. So I'm not writing 150 lines, but let's do it this way. So we realized it after 150 lines. In JavaScript, we can add a particular property to an object outside the definition also. We can add a property to an object anywhere in a program. The syntax for that goes like this. We'll write the object name with the property name along with the dot operator. So we'll write here one more property. Let's say we are using car color, and the value of this property will be, let's say, black, right? What this line will do is it will add one more property inside this existing car object. So initially we had three properties. Now this line will add one more property to this car object. We are using the same name, that is the object's name having three properties over here. We are using the same object name here. You can see here the object name is car, and here we have also used the car object name. Now we have added one more property to this object car. We can check it. Let's print it out on the browser. So what we will do, we'll write here document.write. So here you can see we have used the document.write method to print this car color on our browser. So we have used here car.carColor. Let's save this program now and see. Here you can see the output is black. So this is the property of the object car now. And if we comment this line, let's say if we are commenting this line, let's save this now and see. Here you can see it says undefined. We can add more properties similarly. Like if we want to add another property here, we can go like car dot and the property name, whatever property we want to add. Let's say we want to add fuel type. So it can be a petrol car or a diesel car or an electric car, it doesn't matter. So we can add properties as well. In fact, we can add methods as well. So the syntax to add method goes like, we can add a method here. We'll see it will go like car dot, let's say we are adding a new function. Let's say we are adding the function new fun equals to, and here we will write function. So the body of the function. Now whatever we want to write inside the function, let's say this function return function successfully added. So if we try to call this function from outside, we can do it. So let's try to check out the output for this function. Let's say we want to access this particular function. So save it now, and here you can see it says function successfully added. So the new method we added is the new fun, and we added this method to our pre-existing object, which was the car object. So I hope you guys are aware of how to add a new property or a new method to an existing object by now. What if we want to delete a particular object? So it's pretty easy to do so in JavaScript. We can use the delete keyword, object name, and the property name after the dot operator. Let's suppose we want to delete car model here. We want to delete this particular property of the object car. So as we all know, JavaScript is a loosely typed language, right? So we can change the data type of these properties on the fly. Now we will change the data type of this property. We had the price property, right? So we'll change the data type of this particular property now. We know that the value of the price property is a number. Let's change this number to a string data type. What we have to do is we have to write here car dot price and update the value here. Let's say we are using 70,000 and we have to put here semicolon. It's the same thing we do to update the value of a particular variable, right? So if we try to print the value of price now, we'll get the output as 70,000. Let's try to print it on the browser. So we'll cut it from here, we'll paste it here, and we will print car price. Save it now. See, here you can see it says 70,000. If we want to check the type of this property, what we can do is we can use the type of operator. So we'll use the type of operator. So this is the syntax of how we can use the type of operator. Let's save this now and see, here it says string. Earlier it was a number, but now it is a string. So all these things can be done dynamically in a program wherever we want to do them. So that's the benefit of having objects in JavaScript. Till now we came across many methods and properties of objects in JavaScript, like the push method, which we use to add something to the object, or if we want to delete something from the object, we can use the delete method, right? So these are some of the predefined methods we have in JavaScript for objects. Apart from these methods, we have some predefined objects as well, which are used in certain specific conditions. Math object is one among them. We use the math object whenever we are making a calculator or working on a program with calculations on any kinds of numbers. So the math object in JavaScript has built-in properties, and these properties most often provide mathematical properties such as the pi, and we have Euler's constant and many more such methods. If we talk about the methods present within the math object, we have several methods present. Like, we can't discuss all of them, but we can look at these methods and we will use a few of them. So let's move ahead and have a look at all the methods present in JavaScript. So guys, these are the methods we have. We have a list of methods having a variety of usage, and you can pause the video and take a screenshot, or if you want to note them down, you can do it as well. So it depends on you totally. So these are all the methods we have in math object. So we will go through a few essential methods which we might need ahead in this particular course. So let's move on and have a look at few of them. So I hope you guys are aware of the value of pi, which is something like 3.1415 and so on, a hard to remember value, right? We can use the pi method in JavaScript and we don't have to read out or remember this value every time we need it. So the syntax is quite simple. All we have to do is we have to call this method and we are good to go. So let's print this value of pi now. We are going to print the value of pi. What we have to do is we have to write here document dot write, and we have to use here math dot pi. So this is the syntax of how we can print the value of pi on our browser. So if you want to put it inside something like h1 tag or h2 tag, it's totally upon you. Go ahead and save this and check it out. So this is the value of pi, which is 3.1415926. So this is the complete value of pi. It's a hard to remember value, right? So JavaScript already stores the value of pi. So anytime we want it, like if we want to know the area of a circle, so we don't have to Google for the value, or we don't have to remember the value. JavaScript gives us effortless access to use the value of pi. One more similar value is Euler's value. So we can use this method anytime. Just like we have the pi method, we also have the Euler's method. So we can use this method anytime we need the value. So the syntax for Euler's value goes the same as that for math.py. The only change is we will write E in place of pi. So here in place of pi, we will replace it with capital E. So this is similar, like we can use the same for pi and we can use the same for Euler's. The only difference is of a character. So we can save it and see, here's the value of Euler's constant. These values are pretty hard to remember, right? So anytime we need them, we don't have to Google it, or we don't have to remember them as well. So what we can do is we can use the math object and we are good to go in our program. Apart from that, the math object is used for some other methods, such as finding the square root of a number. Yes, we can create the function for it. Still, many of these easy and straightforward mathematical functions are already built in JavaScript, like the square root of a number or the power of a number. If we want to round up a number, we can use the built-in method for that also. So let's make a program that gives us the square root of a number. As we already discussed, we can create a function for it. But why do we do that when we can use the built-in JavaScript math object methods? So let's move on and create a variable first. So we'll remove this and we'll create a variable. Let's say var n, and the value of n will be 49, let's suppose. So we know that the square root of 49 is 7. So to get the output, we have to create another variable that will hold the value returned by the math object. So we'll create another variable. Let's say we are creating another variable var answer, and this variable will hold the value returned by math.sqrt. So math.sqrt is the method for returning the square root of a number. So then we will print the value of answer. Now we will print the value of variable answer. So we'll write here document.write and we'll print the value of answer. So let's print it inside the h1 tag. So let's print the value of answer now and see if the output is 7 or not. So here you can see we have the output as 7. So the square root of 49 is 7. The program works like we give it a number. Let's suppose we are giving it a number 144. Okay, in place of 49 we are giving it a number 144. So this value will be stored in the variable n. Then it will find the square root of this number and it will save the square root in a variable answer. So we have another variable here and the value of square root will be saved inside the answer variable. And finally, when we save this program, we have the output as 12. So this is how this particular program works. So there are several similar methods present in JavaScript, and the following two methods we are going to discuss are a bit more helpful and we'll use them in future. We'll definitely use them in future. So the two new methods are the min and the max method. Let's comment this out first. So suppose we have a list of numbers and we want to find the smallest and the largest numbers present in that list. So let's do it for the largest number first. So the syntax for the max method goes like, we'll write here document.write. Let's suppose we are using here max and we have a list of numbers. Let's suppose we have random numbers 1, 2, 6, 3, and we are using random numbers. So this is our list of numbers. So what is the output of this particular program? So we are using the math.max. What this method will do is it will find the greatest number of all these numbers. So here we can see that 87425 is the greatest among all these numbers. So if we save this program, we will get the output as 87425. Similarly, if we copy this line and paste it here, and instead of the max, we'll use the min method. So what min method will do, that it will find the smallest number of all these numbers. So let's save it and see the answer here is 0. That's because 0 is the smallest number present in this list. So that's how the min and the max methods work in JavaScript. So the last method we are going to discuss in this video is math.power method. Suppose we want to print the value of 2 raised to the power 4. To print this on the browser, we can also create a function, but we have a method in math object that makes this task a little more straightforward. It is beneficial when we want to print a larger number. So what we have to do is, we will again write here document.write, and this time we'll use the math.power method. So here we have to provide it 2 parameters. Let's suppose we are providing here the parameters as 2 and 4. So it will print 2 raised to the power 4. The second parameter will be the power of the first number. So this particular line will print 2 into 2 into 2 into 2. That means 16. So save it and let's check the output now. So here you can see it says 16. If we do the same for, let's suppose 10. Save it now and here you can see the output as 10,000. It is 10 into 10, which is 100, into 10, 1000, into 10, 10,000. So these are some vital math object methods present in JavaScript. You can use the other methods as well. As we have seen earlier in this videos, we have a list of methods. There are different methods present in math object methods. The benefit of using these object methods is that it's way easier to write these 8 characters. Suppose we are using the math.sqrt method. It is easier to use this method instead of creating a whole new function. So that's why we use the math object methods in JavaScript. So the date object in JavaScript is a handy built-in object, especially used when working with the date and the time. So how the date object work is, whenever we create a date object, it goes ahead and grabs the current date and the time from the browser. So whatever time is there in our browser, the date object will grab it and give it to us as the output. So before we move on to the date object, let me introduce to you guys a small yet exciting function present in JavaScript. So that function is setInterval function. What this setInterval function or method will do is, it will run a function repeatedly after a specific interval. For example, if we have a function and we want to print that function in a browser automatically after 5 seconds. So in that case, we can use the setInterval method. So let's move ahead and have a look at the syntax for the setInterval method so that you can understand it much better. So let's create a function here first. So let's say we have a function named something, and then we have open and close round bracket and the body of the function. So what this something function will do, that it will print a string on the browser. So let's suppose we are using a document.write, and the string we are going to use is a basic string which we used in our previous program, that is welcome to SimpliCode. So this is our basic function which will print welcome to SimpliCode on the browser. If we call this function using the setInterval method, so this setInterval method will print this string on the browser repeatedly. Let's use the setInterval method here. So the syntax for using the setInterval method is, we have to write here setInterval, and we have to give 2 parameters. The first one is the function name. So we'll write here something and we'll call the function. Then after a comma, we have to mention the time here, which is in milliseconds. So 1000 here means 1 second. So let's say we are using 2000 milliseconds. So we'll write here 2000. and this 2000 refers to those 2 seconds of interval between the strings that will be printed again. So let's save this program, and here after 2 seconds you can see it's printing welcome to SimpliCode. So after every 2 seconds it will print this string. So let's do one thing. Let's use the h1 tag here. So guys, we have used the h1 tag here. What we are going to do, we use the h1 tag because it will make it more easy for you guys to understand. So let's save it now and see, after 2 seconds it will print welcome to SimpliCode on the browser. Then again after 2 seconds the same string will be printed again, then again and again, and so on and so forth. So I explained this function right now because we are going to use this function today in a program. So let's move ahead and have a look at the date object now. So we'll go deep in the date object now. First thing is, while creating a date object, we have to keep in mind that in JavaScript we have 4 different ways to create a date object. So we'll discuss them one by one. The first way is to use the new date constructor. So we'll comment this program and let's save this program now. Let's have a look at the example of how to use the new date constructor. So what we'll do, we'll create a variable first. Let's say we are creating a variable where now, and we'll create a date object. So we'll write here new date, and this is the first way of how to create a date object. So we'll write here new date, and then what we'll do, we'll write document dot write, and we'll print now. So creating the date object will return the weekday, month, date, year, time, and the local time zone. So let's print this on the browser and let's save it. And here you can see it. It shows everything. It shows the weekday, it shows the month, it shows date, year, time, and the local time zone as well, right? So the date object is a static object. It means that the computer time will change, right? So whatever time it is right now, it will change after few seconds, but the date object will remain the same once called. So once we have called this function, the time here will remain the same. It will not change according to the browser's time. So that's where we can use the set interval method to update the time again and again after a specific interval of time. So the following way to create the date object is by providing the parameters to the previous function. So what we'll do, we'll provide here parameters to this new date method. So let's change this date object here only. What we will do is we'll use new date and we'll provide these parameters. So we'll provide the parameters as, the first parameter will be the year, the second one will be month, the third one will be day, and the next one will be hour. So whatever value we want to assign as hour. So there are 7 basic parameters. So the 7 basic parameters are year, month, day, hour, minute, and second and millisecond. So the order remains the same. Suppose we are providing all the 7 parameters, then those 7 parameters will be taken accordingly. It's not like we can give the day first and then we move ahead and provide the year or a month. So if we want to print all the 7, so what we have to do is we have to provide all the 7 parameters. Let's say we are providing all the 7 and the last one will be 0. So let's save it now. So you can see here the year is 2018. So we have used here 0, so the month will be January. One thing to keep in mind is if we are writing 0, it will take as January. So if we want to print December, we have to use here 11 instead of 0. So if we write here 11, it will print December. So you can see here December is the 11th month because the month is starting from 0 in this case. So next up we have the day as well. We have Monday and we have the time as 10:33 and 30 seconds. So it's 10 hours, 33 minutes and 30 seconds. And finally it has the local time zone. So that's how the new date constructor work with all the parameters. Suppose if we want to print only 5 of these values. So these 5 values will be year, month, day, hour and minute. So what we'll do is we'll remove these 2 values, and if we save it now, so here you can see instead of the seconds it will print 00 because the default value of seconds will be 00 in this case. The fun part here is we have to provide at least two parameters here. If we try to put only one parameter, that is the year value, it will take it as a millisecond. So if we try to write here only 2018, so this is the year basically, right? So what we are expecting is it will print the year, but this is not what is going to happen. So if we save it now, you can see here it shows 1970, January 1, 1970. So this is actually the third way of creating the new date constructor, in which we give millisecond as the parameter. So the last way we have to create the new date constructor is we have to use the new date along with the string here. So let's understand this with the help of an example first. So let's use here a string. What we'll do is we'll write here October 13, 2014, and we'll give it the time as 11 hours 30 minutes and 34 seconds. Let's save it now, and here you can see it shows the day Monday on October 13th 2014, and the time is 11 hours 30 minutes and 34 seconds along with the local time zone. So that's the fourth way of how to create a new date object from the provided string. Here you can see in the output it created a new date object from the provided string. So these are the four ways to create a new date object. Moving on, let's talk about the methods present within the date object. So just like we had methods for the math object, similarly in the date object, methods are also present. In fact, more than 40 different methods are present within the date object. So here's the list of methods present within the date object. We have a list of methods having a variety of usage. So you can pause the video and take a screenshot, or if you want to note them down, you can do it as well. It's totally up to you guys. But these are the methods we have in the date object. So we have the get method, and then if we talk about, we have the set methods as well. So these are the methods and they have different functions. So you can see here, like the set date method, we can use it to set the day of the month for a specified date according to the local time. So similarly, we have many more methods, like we have more than 40 methods as we mentioned it earlier. So these are the basic 40 methods we have in the date object. So you can take a note of these methods and you can use them later. So we can't go through each of these methods, but we will go through a few essential methods which we might need ahead in this particular course. So let's comment this as well. So what we'll do now is we'll create a program, a basic clock we can say, using few methods. So the first thing we need to do is we need to create a function. This function will print the current time on the browser. So let's say we have a function, and let's say the function name is clock, and we have the opening and closing round brackets and the body of the function. Moving ahead, we will create a variable and a new date object. Let's do it first. Let's say we are using a variable cd, and what we'll do, we'll create a new date object. So we'll write here new date. So we have created a new date object. Remember, we have different ways to create a new date object, right? We'll be using the first one here. What it does is it will grab the current time and date and store it in a variable called cd. So now the variable called cd holds the current date and current time. This variable cd actually contains a lot of information, right? But we need access to only specific values like the hours, minutes and second, because we want to make a clock, right? So we need hours, minutes and seconds only. So that's where methods come into place. So let's declare a few variables first and then we'll use the methods. So we'll declare here three variables. Let's say the first variable is var hours, and the second variable is var minutes, and the third variable is var seconds. So we have these three variables now. The next thing we are going to do is we'll use the methods for these three variables. So if we want to take the value of hours from the new date object, what we have to do is we have to use a method, and the method is get hours. So how to use this method? We'll access the value of hours from the variable cd, because remember the cd variable holds a lot of information, like it holds whole information about date, current time and everything about that. So we'll use here where get hours. So similarly for minutes, we'll use get minutes. And for seconds, we have to use get seconds. So these are the three basic methods we are going to use in this particular program. So one thing to keep in mind is this method works with 24-hour format. So 3 p.m. will be stored as 15 in the variable hours. Similarly, for the variables minutes and seconds, we have two methods, right? We have the get minutes and the get seconds method. So the current value of minutes will be stored inside the minutes variable, and the current value of seconds in the computer will be stored inside the seconds variable. The value of these variables will change every time we call the program, right? Every time it will print the current hour, minute and second. Now all we have to do is we have to print this time on the browser. So what we'll do is we'll use document.write and we'll print here. Let's say we are using the h2 tag. We'll print here hours, then we have to use the colon, then we have to print the minutes, and then again we'll use colon, and then finally we have seconds. So we'll close the h2 tag here, and now so we are done with printing the time on a browser. The final thing we have to do is we have to call this clock function, right? So let's save this program now and see here it says 22:22:50. It means 11 hours 22 minutes and 50 seconds. It's 11 p.m. right? So because we are using the 24-hour format. One thing you might notice that the time we have in a browser is static, which means it is not changing. So for that we have to use the set interval function. Let's use it here so that the time will change after every second. So if we want to do it, what we have to do is we have to use the set interval here. So the set interval method, we have to call the clock function and then we have to provide the time after which it will be printed. So let's save it now, and here you can see after every 1 second the time is being printed on the browser. So it was 51, then 52, then 53, 4 and so on. So guys, these are some basic methods present within the date object in JavaScript. We have a lot of such methods present in JavaScript. We have already seen them in the video. If you want to use them, you can do it. That's quite easy to use them. So object literals method in JavaScript are defined as a comma separated list of name value pairs wrapped nicely in curly braces. So we already came across this method in the previous video when we talked about defining objects in JavaScript, right? So we are talking again about this method because in the following video where we'll be discussing constructors in JavaScript, I want you guys to understand this method thoroughly so that it will be easy for you guys to understand the difference between the object literal method and the constructor method. So this method is all about wrapping up of all the data of an object in a nice and tidy way. So the object literal method is one way of creating an object, right? And the object constructor method is another way of creating an object. So let's discuss the advantages of using the object literal method. So the first advantage of using the object literal method is we don't have to create an empty object. So what we can do is we can directly add properties and behaviors while creating the object. So let's take an example wherein we will print the area and the parameter of a rectangle. So we'll create an object first. So let's say we are defining an object and here we will write where, and the name of the object will be, let's say, rect1, because we are printing the area and the parameter of a rectangle. Then we have a pair of curly braces for the body of an object. So here we are with an object which is named as rect1. And now let's say we have two properties which are the length and the width of a rectangle. So let's define them as well. So we'll write the property name, and So let's say the first property is length. So this is the first property, and then we'll use colon. So here one thing to notice is we are using colon in place of equals to assign a value, right? We are assigning a value to this length property, and let's say the value is 5, and then it will be followed by a comma. Then we'll write here the next property. Let's say width is the next property, and we'll again use colon, and let's say the value of width is 10. And then we'll separate this key value pair. So one thing here to notice is that we are using the key value pair. So here in this case, the keys are length and width, and the values for these keys are 5 and 10. So remember this, guys, because we need them in following videos. So let's move ahead and we'll declare the methods as well. I hope you guys are aware of the syntax for how to use a method within an object. So let's define here the methods as well. So we'll use two methods, one for the area and the another one for parameter. So let's say the method for area is getArea, and then we'll use colon, and then we'll write here function, and then we have the body of the function. So what this getArea method will return is, it will return the area of the rectangle, right? So it will return, so the area of rectangle is, let me write it here. So the area of rectangle is length into width, or we'll write here W. So it will return this dot length into this dot width, right? So one thing to notice here is we are using the this keyword again. So this keyword refers to the object it belongs to. So here in this program, this will refer to the object basically, right? Here in this case, it refers to object rect1. So let's use the other method as well. The next method will be getParameter, and then we'll use the colon, then we have the function keyword and the body of this method. So what this particular method will return is, it will return the parameter of a rectangle. So the parameter of a rectangle is 2 into length plus width, or we can say 2 into length plus 2 into width. So here in this case, it will return 2 into this dot length plus 2 into this dot width, right? So let's print these values as well. So we'll write here document.write, and we'll print all the 4 properties, or we can say we'll print the length, then we'll print the width, and then we'll print the area of the rectangle, and finally we'll print the parameter, right? So let's say we are using the h2 tag here to make it more clear for you guys. So here we will write, the first sentence will be the length of rectangle is, and then we'll print the value of length. Then finally we'll use the h2 tag again. Now we'll copy this statement and we'll print it 4 times, because we want to print all the 4 values, right? We want to print the length, width, area and parameter. So we'll write here width, and here in the next line we will print the area, and finally we'll print the parameter, right? So we'll change the values as well. So here we have 2 properties, the length and the width, and then we have 2 methods. The first one is getArea and the second one is getParameter. So here we are done with our printing process. So let's save this program now and see. Here we have 4 values. The length of rectangle is 5, as we have given the value 5, and then we have the width as 10, and then we have the area as 50, because area is length into width, which is 10 into 5 or 5 into 10, 50. And then finally we have the parameter, which is 2 into length, which is 10, and then we have 2 into 10, that is 20, because width is 10, right? So 20 plus 10, 30. So the parameter of rectangle is 30. So we discussed this method again to make it more clear to you guys. Whenever we are working with a single object, or when we know everything about the properties and the behavior of an object, we should always use the object literal method. That's because this method runs faster and we have to write minimum code while using the object literal method. we discussed the object literal method of creating an object, right? We discussed the advantages of using that method. This is the program we made in the previous video. So here we use the object literal method of creating an object. We created an object for rectangle, and this object will print the area and perimeter of a rectangle, right? So today we will be discussing two other ways of creating an object. So in JavaScript, we can use constructor in two different ways. We will be discussing both of them. The first one we will discuss is the object constructor method, and the other way of doing so is by using the constructor function. We have already discussed the constructor function in the previous video, wherein we took the example of a car, but we'll go through it once again so that there will be no confusion between all the methods of creating an object in JavaScript. So let's move ahead and we'll go through the object constructor method now. So the syntax for creating an empty object using the object constructor method goes like this. We'll write the var keyword followed by the object name. Then we have the equals to sign, and the equals to sign is followed by the new keyword and object with a capital U. So this is the syntax of creating an empty object by using the object constructor method. So you guys have to remember this syntax, and it will remain the same every time we use the object constructor method. So this object here, so this object is the constructor. What this will do is it will create an instance for this object and assign it to the object name. So whatever object we are creating here, it will assign it to this object, through which we can write and access other properties of the object. So let's move on and we'll create an object first. Let's say we are creating the same program we did in the previous tutorial, wherein we printed the area and the perimeter of a rectangle. So we'll use the same program so that there will be no confusion. Let's move ahead and create an empty object now. So the syntax will be like, we'll write the object name as, let's say, rect2, and then we have the new keyword along with the object and opening and closing round brackets. So this is our empty object. So this statement is the same as, like, if you remember in the last video when we created an object using the object literal method, so we created it like, we wrote var keyword along with the object name, and then we have a pair of curly braces. So both these statements are same. What we did is we created an empty object in both the cases. So after creating an empty object, the next thing we'll do is we'll add properties and behaviors to that object. So let's move on and we'll add two properties, which are length and the width of a rectangle, and then we'll add methods as well. So how to add properties to an object? We'll write here the object name dot property name. So the object name here is rect2 and the property name will be length equals to, the value of length will be, let's say, 5. And the second property we have is the width, and we'll write here rect2 dot width, and the value for this will be, let's say, 10. So we are done with the properties here. Next up, we'll add the methods as well. So let's add the two methods as well in this object. Our two methods are the getArea and the getPerimeter method. The syntax for adding methods to an object goes like this. We are adding a method getArea, right? So we'll write here the object name dot method name. So let's say our method name is getArea followed by an equals to sign, and we'll write here function and then the body of the method. So this getArea method will return the area of a rectangle, right? So we'll use this keyword again as we did in the last video. By now I hope you guys are aware of this keyword. So we'll write here return this dot length into this dot width. So this method will return the area of a rectangle. Next up we have another method, which is, we'll write here rect2 dot get perimeter for printing the perimeter of a rectangle. So we'll again write here function and then we have the body of the function. So this method will return the perimeter. So the perimeter of rectangle goes like 2 into length plus 2 into width. So here we are done with the object. Next up, we'll print these values on the browser. So we'll use the same code for printing which we used in the previous video. So we'll copy it from here and we'll paste it here. So what we have to change here is we have to change the name of our object. So we'll write here rect2 in place of rect1 and we are good to go. Let's save this. So here you can see we have made a mistake here. So you can see that it is not printing the parameter of a rectangle, right? So the mistake here is we forgot to mention this keyword here. So we'll write here this dot length and this dot width. So let's save this now and see we have the length, width, area and parameter of the rectangle. So the area is 10 into 5 which is 50 and the parameter is 2 into 10 plus 2 into 5. So 20 plus 10 equals to 30. So we have the parameter here as well. And if you guys remember, we had the same output in the previous video as well. So the difference between the object constructor method and the object literal method is almost negligible, right? The main difference is at the initial part of the code. So the main difference lies here. The syntax is a bit different. In the object literal method, we used curly braces, and in the object constructor method, we use the parenthesis. Of course, there are some more minor differences, but the code looks almost the same in the end. So the advantage of the literal object method over the object constructor method is it is easy to use syntax wise. Also, it executes faster than this method because we define all the properties and methods at a single place while defining the object, right? So this is the difference between the object literal method and the object constructor method. So we'll comment this program now and let's move ahead and discuss another way of creating an object, which is the constructor function method. This way of creating an object is a bit different from the other two ways which we discussed till now. It is used when we work with multiple instances of an object. It works like we have a template and we can access that template using multiple objects. So if we want to make more than one object and we don't want to write the code again and again for each object, we can use this method when we have more than one object. If you guys remember, like in the previous video where we took the example of a car, we created an object car and then we created multiple instances wherein we use those instances for different car manufacturers. Let's take a look at this method first and then we'll discuss the advantages of using this method as well. So as the name suggests, the method starts with function and then we'll write the name of the function. Let's say we have rect, and then inside the opening and closing round brackets we'll pass the properties as parameters. So let's take a look. We'll write here length, comma, width. So we have these two properties only, and then we have the body of the function. So inside the function's body we'll write the properties and we'll use this keyword here. What we'll do is we'll use this dot property name equals to property name. So we'll write here this dot length equals to length. So this is the syntax for adding any property to a function. What we just did is whenever we are going to create an object using this constructor function method, we'll pass certain values. We'll pass the length and the width, right? So all these values will be present at the RHS. So all these values will be present here, and this dot length will be the actual property of the object. So let's move ahead and add the second property as well. We'll write here this dot width equals to width. So we had two methods as well, right? Let's add them here inside the constructor function. We'll use this keyword again. We'll write here this dot get area, and we'll write here function with opening and closing round brackets and the body of the function. So this method will again return the area of a rectangle. So we'll write here return length into width. So there's a difference in these two methods. So here we use the this keyword here, and in the previous method we used the this keyword inside the method, right? So there's a difference in these two methods. So now what we'll do, we'll add another method. So the next method is this dot get parameter, and the syntax will be the same. We'll write here function, then the body of the function. So we'll write return 2 into length plus 2 into width. So here we are done with the constructor function. Now all we have to do is we have to create an object and we'll pass the parameters as well. So let's say we are creating an object here. For that we have to write here var and the object name. So let's say the object name is R1, and after the equals to we have to write the new keyword and the name of the function. So we'll write here rect3 and we'll pass the parameters. So let's say the parameters are 5 and 10 because we used these parameters in other two videos as well. So we'll write here 5 and 10. Let's suppose we want to print the area and parameter. So here we are done with the printing part. So what we are printing is we are printing the area of the rectangle and the perimeter of the rectangle. So we have called these two methods using the object name. So we have written here r1.getArea and r1.getParameter. Similarly, if we want to print the length and width, we can do that as well. What we have to do is we have to write document.write, and let's say we are printing them simply. We'll write here r1.length, and then we'll copy this. We'll write here width. So here we are done with the total process, and now we'll save this program and see we have the values here. The value of length is 5 because we have passed the parameter as 5, and then we have the value of width which is 10, and this is also because of the parameter. Then we have the area of rectangle which is 10 into 5, so it is 50, and then we have the perimeter as 30. So the advantage of using this method is we can create more objects. If we want to add one more object here, let's say we are using var r2 and we want to print, let's say the parameters are different here. Let's say we are giving as 4 and 10, or let's say we are giving in 4 and 8. So what we have to do is we have to copy all this, and we have to change the value here as instead of r1 we'll use r2. Here again we'll use r2, and then we have to update the value of r2 here, and we are good to go now. So let's save this program and see we have the values for other object as well. So here we have 4 as length, and then we have 8 as width, and the area is 8 into 4 which is 32, and the parameter is 2 into 8 which is 16, and 2 into 4 which is 8. So 16 plus 8 is 24. So I hope you guys got this. I hope you guys understood the advantages of using the constructor function. So the main advantage is that only that we can create more than one object by using this method. Till now we came across several different ways of creating an object in JavaScript, right? We can create an object using the object literal method, or we can do it with the help of the constructor function. So by now I hope you guys are aware of how to create an object and how to add properties and methods to an object. Like, we can create methods that perform several specific tasks. If we talk about a method in particular, if you guys remember in the previous video, we created a program for the area and the parameter of a rectangle. So in that program, we created a method getArea, which returns the area of the rectangle, right? So we had to call that method, and we can sit back and relax because we know that it will print the area of the rectangle, right? So let's move ahead, and today we will discuss a completely new topic, which is prototypes in JavaScript. So for this video, we are going to use console for printing. That's because it will be easy for you guys to understand the concept of prototypes if we use the console instead of using a normal document.write method. So let me do one thing, guys. We'll print a statement on the console. So we'll write here console.log, and we'll print, let's say, welcome to SimpliCode. So let's save this, and if we open console here in our browser, we have to go to inspect, and then we have to go to console, and here you can see we have welcome to SimpliCode written over here. So in the last video we talked about creating an object with the help of object literal method, right? So let's suppose we are creating an object here with the help of same object literal method. So what we have to do, we have to create an empty object first. So let's say our object name is ABC, and we'll use the curly braces here. So what we have to do is we have to pass the properties here. So let's suppose our properties are name, and the value of name, let's say Kaushal, followed by a comma, and then we have, let's say, subject. Value of subject will be, let's say, JavaScript, and then finally we have the address. So let's say the value of address is Bangalore, right? This is a basic object we made, right? If we write here console.log ABC, so if we want to print this object on the console, so what we'll do here, we'll write console.log and then we'll use ABC. So let's save this now, and here you can see on the console that we have our object here. So we have our object with all the three properties. We have address as Bangalore, we have name as Kaushal, and subject as JavaScript. So if you guys look here carefully, you will notice that we have one more entity here, that is we have __ proto. So what is this __ proto? So alright, we mentioned all the other three properties in our object, but we didn't do anything for this __ proto. So let's discuss this now. Let's take a scenario wherein someone told us to create a website. Like, let's suppose we have to make a travel website through which people can book their travel destinations. Now, do we have to start creating the website from scratch? No, that's because we have some of the necessary conditions already fulfilled. Like, we have Chrome, we already have Bootstrap for styling and all, and we can use Bootstrap to design a website, right? So we have certain things already present and we have to work over them to create our website. Similarly, prototype refers to the destination from where we started to create an object. Like, we have methods for arrays, we have objects and strings as well. So all these methods are being inherited from somewhere. So whenever we create an object using the object literal method, then it will start creating the object from the object.prototype. So if we click here on the __ proto, we have access to a list of methods already present within the object.prototype. So, and all of them are predefined. We can use any of them. We didn't define them. They are already present. We defined only these three properties. Like, we defined address, name, and subject only. In simple words, all JavaScript objects inherits properties and methods from a prototype. Date objects inherit from date.prototype, and similarly when we use array objects, they inherit from array.prototype. So the object.prototype is on the top of the prototype inheritance chain. So date objects, array objects, and person objects, all these objects inherit their properties from object.prototype. So moving on now, let's create another object. So we talked about the object literal method. So here we don't have too much to do. So let's move ahead and we'll create another object. This time we'll create it with the help of a constructor function. So let's create a function here first. Let's say we have a function named as function xyz. So then we have the parameters as name, and then we'll take all these three properties. We'll take name, subject, and let's say address. So then we have the body of the function, inside which we'll use this keyword. We'll write here this dot name equals to name. Similarly, this dot address equals to address, and finally we have this dot subject equals to subject. So we'll create an instance now. Let's say we are creating an object. Let's say our object name is where x1, and we'll write here new, and then we'll write xyz, and we'll pass the values. So let's say the name is Kaushal, and we have subject as, let's change the subject, we'll write here Java, and we have finally have the address. Let's say the address is Earth. Okay, so the values are different from the previous example we took. What we'll do now, we'll write here console.log, and we'll print x1 now. So we are done creating our object, and here we have a constructor function named xyz, And then we have few properties which are the same as we used in the previous example. So then we have an object named x1 which holds the values for all three properties. And lastly, we printed the object on the console. So let's save it now, and we can see here in console we have the object with all the properties. There's almost no difference here from the object literal method, right? But when we click here on the proto, here we can encounter the difference now. You can see here we have one more entity here named as the constructor. So this constructor here has its own prototype. So this constructor here has its own prototype. If we use a constructor in a program, it always has its own prototype. This might seem a bit difficult to you guys, but don't worry, it will be apparent to you guys once we move on to the usage and modifications of prototype. So here we are with the two examples. In the first one, we created an object with the help of object literal method. There we saw that it has only a single prototype. That is the object prototype. Later, when we moved on to the constructor function method, we realized that there are two different prototypes present. One is the prototype which is available every time. That is the object.prototype, and the other one is the constructor's own prototype. It might sound a little hard to you guys, but prototype is nothing but it refers to the point from where it all started, from where we have inherited all the properties. So we can make changes to the prototype of our own object. Like if we want to add something to our prototype, we can do it. We have a method for that in JavaScript. We'll do it later in this video. We can't make changes to the object prototype. Remember this thing, guys. I'll suggest you not to edit the object.prototype because it's not a good practice to make changes in that. If we want to edit any prototype, then we have to make sure that we are making changes in our own prototype that we made with the help of constructors. The prototype made by us is also inherited from the object.prototype. If we want to make another prototype here, we can do it. Like if we are going to add utility functions to our program, but at the same time, we don't want to do anything with the properties of our constructor function, we can make another prototype for that. We can create a prototype for separate method. So if we want to add a method in this constructor function, we can do it. We can add it separately with the help of prototypes. So for that, we have to follow a syntax, a particular syntax. We can do it this way, like we have to write here xyz dot prototype, and then we have to write the method name. Let's say we are writing here get name. Fine. We'll write here function, and then we have the body of the function. So let's suppose this method returns the name. So we'll write here return this dot name. So if we try to run this program now, we can see there's no difference from the previous one. But if we check the prototypes now, so here you can see we have another prototype named as get name. So this is how we can edit the prototype of our object. Now if we try to access this get name method with the help of x1 object, so we can do it. So let's try to do it on console. We'll write here x1 dot get name, and see here we have the output as caution. Similarly, let's create one more prototype here to remove any sort of confusion. So what we'll do, we'll create another prototype. So let's say we are creating a prototype for address now. So what we'll do, we'll write here xyz dot prototype dot get address. So it will be a method. So we'll write here function. We don't have to pass any parameters here. So let's suppose it returns the value of address. So we'll write here this dot address, and we are good to go. So let's save it now. And if we go to underscore proto, we can see we have one more prototype here named as get address. So what we have to do now is we'll make another object. Let's say we are copying this from here. We'll paste it here. So let's change the values. Let's say we write here Mars, and then we have, let's change the subject basically because we are looking for the subject. So let's change this value as well. Let's say we have here SimpliCode, and we'll change the name of the object. Let's say we have x2 now. Save it and if we write here x2 dot, let's say get name. So here you can see the output as SimpliCode. Similarly, if we write here instead of get name, we write here get address. So here you can see the output as Mars, because the value we passed while creating the object is Mars here. So we can access this value directly using the prototype method. So if we use the object constructor function, if you guys remember, we cannot add a new property to an existing object. For example, if we try to add a property here, let's say if we try to add a property to this existing function, what we can write here is xyz dot grades. Let's say the grade is A. So if we save this now, here you can see there's nothing changed here. So we don't have any change in the prototypes, or we don't have any changes in the properties as well. So we simply can't add a property to an existing function like this, but we have a method for this also. So to add a new property to a constructor, we must add it to the constructor function, or we can use the prototype property here as well. So the JavaScript prototype property allows us to add new properties to a object constructor. Just like we added the methods to our constructor function previously, similarly we can add properties as well. So we have to write here, so we'll remove this line. We have to write here xyz dot prototype, and then we have to write the property name here. Let's say we are writing here grades, and then we'll pass the value. Let's say the grade is A. So if we save this now, and if we go back here and if we check the underscore proto, so here you can see we have a property here named as grades, and the value is A. So if we try to print x1 dot grade in our console, so the output will be A. So let's try to do it here. We'll write here x2 dot grades, and here you can see the value is A here. So we can add a property to an existing constructor function with the help of prototype methods. So this is the basic usage of prototypes in JavaScript. We can use prototypes to add a property or a method to an already existing constructor function. Guys, inheritance is an essential concept in any object-oriented programming language. Inheritance refers to the procedure through which one class or one constructor inherits the properties and methods of another constructor. In simple terms, let's suppose we have a constructor named as vehicle, and we know we have different types of vehicles present, like we have cars and we have bikes as well. So all these types share a few things in common, right? And now if we want to create a constructor, let's say we want to create a constructor bike, and we want it to have a few of the same properties and methods as of the vehicles constructor. So in that case, we are left with two options. Either we can copy the properties from vehicle constructor and paste them inside the bike constructor, or we can simply use inheritance to inherit those properties from the vehicle constructor to the bike constructor. In this case, the vehicle class will be known as a base class, and the bike constructor or class will be known as the derived constructor, because we derived a few properties from the vehicle constructor, right? Don't worry guys, I know the concept of classes might be new for you, and the concept of inheritance might seem a bit different from other languages. Like if you are coming from a C++ background, you may notice that there we use classes for the concept of inheritance. But in JavaScript, before the introduction of ES6, that is ECMAScript 6, the concept of inheritance was based on constructors and prototypes. So with the introduction of ECMAScript 6, the idea of classes was also introduced in JavaScript, and the usage of inheritance was also changed. We will discuss classes and inheritance in the next video. Today we are going to discuss the traditional way of using prototypes for inheritance. So don't be stressed guys if you are not clear with the syntax of inheritance by the end of this video. In the next video you will understand the concept and syntax of inheritance without any confusion. So we'll now talk about a few things. So let's start with the programming part. So guys, whenever we create an object with a method, like we can create an object with the help of object literal method, or we can do the same with the help of constructor function method as well, right? Then we have a prototype every time. You might have noticed it. We have been through it in the past few videos. So every time we create an object, we notice that it has a prototype. Now what we will do here is we'll create a prototype. So the syntax will be like, so we'll write here const. We are using const in place of variable. I hope you guys are aware of const, var and let keywords. So today we are using here const. So let's say the prototype name is employee. We'll write here equals to, and then we have the body of the prototype. Let's do one thing. Now we'll use a method. Let's say the method name is post of the employee, and we'll write here function, and then we have the body of the function. So let's say this function returns a string. So we'll write here return, and let's say the function returns a software developer. And then we have another function named as change name, and we'll write here function, will pass a parameter, and then we have the body of this method. So we'll write here this dot name is equal to name, and we are good to go, right? So what we did here is we created a prototype of the name employee, and it has two functions. One is the employee's post, and the other one is to change the name. So let's save this program and check it in the console if it has any errors. So let's save it now, and we'll go here and check on the console. So here you can see everything is fine. So till now we created a prototype. Now let's create an object as well. So what we'll do, we'll create an object here. We'll write here, let's say var, and let's say the object name is even. So we'll create an object with the help of object dot create method. Okay, so we have to write here dot. So we have to pass the prototype name. So we'll write here employee, and then what we'll do, we'll print this on a console. So we'll write here console.log, and we'll write here even, let's say. So we created an object even with the help of object.create method. Let's save it and check it on the console. If we see here, we don't have anything else other than a single prototype, right? We have a single prototype here. We have no method mentioned. So if we open it, we have the two methods, of course. We have post and we have change name. But if we write here, let's say we are writing here even.name, and the value of name will be, let's say, Kaushal. And then we'll assign a role as well. Let's say these are the two new properties. We'll write here even.role, and let's say the role of Kaushal is writer. Fine. And if we save it and check it again on the console, now what we did is we changed the name and role, right? So these are the two properties. We have both name as Kaushal and role as writer. Now let's see if we can use the methods here as well. So we'll write here, let's say we are using the method even dot change name. What we'll do here is we'll change the name from Kaushal to something else. Let's say we are going to change the name as Ram. So if we save this now, so here you can see the name is changed to Ram. Initially the name was Kaushal, and when we use the change name method, now you can see here the name is changed to Ram. So this means that the methods we defined inside the prototype are working, right? Now let's say we want to create another object here. We created an object even till now. We assigned some properties to it, and we changed the name and printed it on the console. Now let me tell you guys an alternate way to do so. So what we'll do is we'll copy this line from here, because the syntax of that method also looks a bit same. So the syntax will remain the same till here. So we'll paste it here. What we'll do next is we'll pass a few arguments here. So let's pass the arguments first, then I'll explain it to you guys. So what we are going to do is we are going to use curly braces for arguments, and we are going to write here, let's say name, and the value of name will be, we are going to write here value, and we'll pass the value as, let's say, Kaushal 2, right? So we'll use a comma here, then we'll use role, and we'll pass the value of role as well. So let's say the value of role is programmer now, right? Put a comma here. Now I know the syntax is a bit complicated, but this is the reason why classes were introduced in ES6. So this is the reason we'll be using classes in future, but going through this syntax will make the next one easier for you guys. So we have created an object here with the object.create method, and we passed few arguments here. So we have name, and the value of name we want it to be Kaushal2, and the value of role we want it to be programmer. So if we copy this from here, or let's say if we copy these two lines from here, if we cut these two lines from here and we'll paste it here. So if you see here, we have two objects of the same name. We have var even, and here also we have var even. Now both these syntaxes are doing the same thing, that is creating an object of the same name. Suppose if we comment this first object, let's say we are commenting this one, and we'll also comment this line. If we save this now and if we see on our console, so here you can see we have the name as Kaushal2 and role as programmer. So these two syntaxes are doing exactly the same thing. The only thing to notice here is if we use this line with this syntax, if we use even.changeName, and if we save this now, you can see it is not working in this case, right? So if we want to do it, we have to write some more code. So what we have to do is we have to write here writable, and we have to pass the value as true. So what we are doing is we are allowing this method to change the name from Kaushal2 to Ram. So if we save it now, here you can see the name is Ram now. Earlier it was Kaushal2, and now this is working totally fine, right? So both the syntaxes are doing the same things, as we can see here. The reason behind going through this is we need the syntax of creating objects later in this video. So I hope you guys understood it. Now moving ahead, let's take a look at prototypal inheritance. So what we are going to do is we are going to comment this code. So we are going to comment all this, and we are going to write a new one for prototypal inheritance. Let's say we have a constructor function. So let's create a constructor function first. So what we are going to do is we are going to write here, let's say we are going to create the same function. We'll take the same example of employee, right? So we'll write here function employee, and we'll pass the properties here. Let's say we are writing here name, and the another one is ID, and the last property is salary of the employee, right? So next up we have the body of the constructor. So we'll write inside here this dot name is equal to name, then we have this dot id equals to id, then we have this dot salary equals to salary, right? So we know this already, right? We'll now add a method to the prototype of the employee. So we'll write here, we'll write outside this constructor, we'll write here employee dot prototype dot post. Let's say the name of the method is post. So what we are going to do is we are going to write here function, and then we have the body of the function. So let's say this returns the post of the employee. What we'll do is we'll write here return, and it will return the name plus post of the employee, right? So we'll write here this dot name plus bit of space, and then again we'll write here is a content creator, let's say, right? So we are done with the method here. As you can see, what we did here is we created a constructor employee and added a function that returns this string upon calling. So we haven't done anything extra till now. Let's create an object now. So we'll write here, let's say we are creating an object var Kaushal, and what we'll do is we'll write here new underscore employee, and we'll pass the values here. So let's say the values are Kaushal, and the ID is 4, let's say this is the ID 3432 or whatever it is, and the salary let's say is 10,000. Okay, so the next thing is we'll write here console.log, and we'll print the value of Kaushal on a console. So let's save it now, and here you can see we have all the properties here. We have ID as 3432, name as Kaushal, and salary as 10,000. Here if you see inside Proto, you can see here we have a method here, name as post, and we have constructor as employee, and then we have object as well. Now if we call the prototype post with this object, so what we have to do is we have to write here in console, we'll write here Kaushal dot post, and here you can see we have the output as Kaushal is a content creator. Till now it's fine, right? We did small things which we learned in the previous few videos. So let's suppose we have another employee named Arun, and let's assume he's also a content creator, but he's a master in JavaScript as well. So we want to mention it here along with all these properties. We have name, ID, and salary, which we will inherit from this employee constructor, and apart from that we'll add another property which is the subject, or which is the language property. So we have to create a new constructor here for it. So what we'll do is we'll write here function, and then we'll write the name of this constructor. So let's say the name is function programmer. So we'll write here name, we'll pass all the properties. We'll write here name, ID, salary, and finally we have the language, right? Then we have the body of the constructor. The first three properties will remain the same, right? Only subject or language, we have added language here, so only language will be added. Now we'll inherit these properties from employee. Before the concept of class was introduced, inheritance was based on prototypes only. So we'll see the concept of classes in the upcoming video. So here what we are going to do is we are going to call this employee constructor. So we'll write here employee dot call, and we'll pass the properties which we want to inherit. So we'll write here first this, and first we have to write the this keyword, and then we have to write other properties. So we'll write here name, ID, salary. What we did is we called the function employee and asked it to provide all the three mentioned properties to the function programmer. We'll set the value of language by ourselves. We'll write here this dot language equals to language. Now if we create an object for the constructor programmer, what it will do is it will take all the properties from the employee and language will be added to those properties. Let's do it first. So we'll create an object here. We'll write here where, let's say the object name is Arun, and we'll write here new programmer, and we'll pass the values. Let's say the name is Arun, ID is 4321, and salary is, let's say, 12,000. And finally we have to add the subject here as well, or we can say language. So let's say the language is JavaScript. Next thing we are going to do is we are going to print this on console. So we'll write here console.log and we'll print Arun. Right, let's save it and see here we have all the properties available with the provided values. We have name as Arun, we have ID as 4321, salary as 12,000, and language is JavaScript. So this is how we can inherit the properties in the derived constructor from the base constructor. The base constructor is the employee and the derived is a programmer. So coming back to the console, we can see here we have all the four properties, right? 3 of them are inherited and the last one was assigned by us. But I don't know if you guys noticed here that we have the properties only of the constructor. So we don't have any method here, right? So if we see here, we don't have any method of constructor employee, because here you can see we have a method as post, and if we see here we don't have any method. So if we write here, let's say if we write here in our console, we are writing here, let's say Arun dot post, and we'll run it. So here you can see it says Arun dot post is not a function. Right, this is because the prototype post is not assigned to the constructor programmer. For that we have to write some extra code. We have to write here. So we have to write here programmer dot prototype equals to object dot create, and we have to mention the employee prototype. So we'll write here employee dot prototype, right? So save it now, and here you can see now if we go to __ proto, we have post as a method here. So if we write here Arun dot post now, so here you can see it says Arun is a content creator. So we have to provide the prototypes manually as well. Let me show you guys one more thing now. See here, it is not showing the constructor. If we click here on the proto, so we don't have any constructor here named as programmer. So we have to set the constructor as well. We have to set it manually, and to set the constructor manually, we have to write here after this line, we have to write here programmer dot prototype dot constructor equals to programmer. If we save this program now, and if we go back to our console and if we check here, you can see we have a constructor named as programmer now. So you guys might be thinking that we have to work a lot for all this inheritance, right? The fact is we actually had to do it before ES6 was introduced. Now if we want to do the same with the help of classes, the syntax will be so easy. A class is nothing but a template used for creating objects in JavaScript. Just like the constructor function, we can also use classes for creating object in JavaScript. We can include properties and behaviors in a class. Creating a class is a pretty easy job to do. The syntax is somewhat the same as that of a constructor function. So let's move on to the programming part. If you guys are coming from any other object-oriented programming language, like we have C++, Java, PHP, and many more object-oriented programming language, right? So you may have an idea about classes. The syntax for classes in JavaScript is also not so different from other languages. Don't worry if you are going through classes for the first time. We'll have a look at classes. So let's move on to the syntax. And to declare a class, we use the class keyword followed by the name of the class and the body of the class. So we'll write here class. So this is the keyword we use for the declaration of a class. Then we have the name of the class. So let's say we have the name as student here. And then we use curly braces for the body of the class. So this is an empty class named as student. We know that this student has a name, age, roll number, and many more properties, right? So the next thing we are going to do is we can define the properties here only. In fact, the syntax for defining properties is also the same as we had in the constructor function. So let's define the properties first. So let's say we have three properties here: name, age, and roll number. So we'll write here this dot name is equals to name, and then we have this dot age is equals to age, and the last property is this dot roll number. So let's say we are writing here roll, so equals to roll. So we have all the three properties of student. We have name, age, and roll number. So we have to create a constructor here, which will be executed while we create an object, or we can say an instance of this class. So the syntax for creating a constructor will go like, we have to write here constructor, and we have to pass all these three arguments here. We have to pass name, then we have age, and then we have a roll number. So all these three arguments we have to pass here, and also these properties will be kept inside the body of this constructor. So this is the basic syntax of how we are going to create a class in JavaScript. So we have all the three properties here. We have name, we have age, and we have roll number. If you guys notice here, the syntax for the constructor function looks a bit similar to the syntax of the constructor function method, which we came across in the previous few videos, right? So what we are doing is we created a class first with the name student. Then we defined all the properties of this class inside the constructor. So by now things are going easy, right? That's because the syntax for classes is relatively easy to use compared to other methods. Also, we don't have to write code manually for different things. We will understand it much better while working on inheritance. So let's move on, and we will add some methods to this class now. The syntax for adding a method is super simple, guys. We don't have to write here a function name followed by a colon and then we have the function keyword. No, we'll just write here the function name and parenthesis. So to add a method here, we'll write here, let's say we are adding a method organization. So let's say we have a method org. Okay, so we have to write org and a pair of round brackets. That's all. This is the syntax for defining a method in classes. So let's say we want this function to return a string along with the name of the student. So let's say we are writing a return and let's say we want it to return im.name from SimpliCode. Okay. So let's say we are passing a value here as Kaushal and we want this function to return I am Kaushal from SimpliCode. So similarly, we'll add another function here which is for the date of birth of student. So let's see, we'll write here dob and then we have the body of the function. So we want this function to return the date of birth of a student, right? So let's say we are in the year 2020. What we want to do is we have the age of student. Let's say the age is 21 and what we are going to do next is we are going to subtract the age from current year. So 2020 minus this dot age will return the date of birth of student, right? So we'll write here return. Let's say we want it to return a string as well. Let's say the date of birth of this dot name is 2020 minus this dot age. Fine. So here we are done with a string. So we want it to return the date of birth of Kaushal is, let's say, 1999. If we are providing the value as 21, then it will return 1999, right? Let's move ahead and create an object first. So let's say we have an object named as Kaushal and what we are going to do is we are going to write here new and we are going to call the class. So we'll write here student and then we'll pass the values here. So let's say the name is Kaushal, the age is 21 and we have roll number as 45. So we have all the three properties here, right? Next up we are going to print this on a console. So we'll write here console.log and we'll print Kaushal. So let's say if it's working or not. Save it and here you can see on our console we have a student class. We have all the three values. We have age as 21, name as Kaushal and roll number as 45. If we go inside this __ proto, we can see here we have both the methods here. We have org and dob. So let's try to call these methods first. So what we are going to do is we are going to write on our console kaushal.dob. So here you can see we have the output as the date of birth of Kaushal is 1999. Similarly, if we try to call function kaushal.org, so you can see here we have the output as I am Kaushal from SimpliCode, right? So here you can see both the methods are working fine. We have both the outputs here. The first one says the date of birth of Kaushal is 1999 and the next one gives us the organization name. So moving ahead, let me guys tell you about another concept in classes. We'll now discuss static functions in classes. We have to use the static keyword to define a static method followed by the method name. So if we want to define a static method, what we have to do is we have to use the static keyword. So the static keyword is always followed by the name of the method. So let's say we are creating a method here, let's say for adding two numbers. So we'll write here the method name is add and then we have the body of this method. So what we want to do is we want to add two numbers, right? So we have to pass here two parameters as well. We'll write here a comma b and then we want it to return the sum, right? So we'll write here return a plus b. This looks fine, right? Notice here guys, we don't have to use anything from the class or the object. Like in the previous two methods, we used the name and the age property, right? So here we used this dot name and then we used this dot age as well. But here this method is not related to object at any cost. The best part about the static method is we can use static methods without creating the instances of a class. So if we want to access this particular method here, we can do it with the help of class name followed by the dot operator and the method name. So let's try to access this method once. What we are going to do is we are going to write console.log and we are going to access this method with the class name. So we'll write here student.add and we'll pass the values here. So let's say we are passing 10 and 45. Fine. So let's see if it works or not. So save it. And here you can see we have the output as 55. So this is how we can create or use static methods in classes. Let's move on now and we will discuss inheritance with the help of classes in JavaScript. By now we are clear with the meaning of inheritance, right guys? We discussed in the last video that inheritance is the procedure through which one class inherits the properties and methods of another class. So today we are going to see how we can implement inheritance with classes in JavaScript. Although the concept will remain the same, we will create another class here and will inherit the properties of this existing class with some more properties of the derived class. I hope you guys know the difference between base class and derived class. So the class we are going to create now will be the derived class. So let's move ahead and create a class. Let's say we are creating a class here. So let's say for creating a class we have to write class. Let's say the class name is student2. And if we want to inherit the properties of the above class, which is student1, we have to use a particular syntax. So we have to write the extends keyword here. So this is a keyword. Extends is a keyword which is used for inheritance. And then we will write the name of the class which we want to inherit. So we'll write here student. And then we have the body of the class. Here we have a class student1 that inherits the properties of class student. Next up, we'll create a constructor function here and we'll pass all the properties we want to be there for the class student1. So we'll pass the constructor function similarly like we did in the previous class. So we'll write here constructor and we'll pass all the properties we want to be there for class student1. So we have the first three properties are name, which we are going to inherit from the above class. Then we have age and then we have roll number, right? So let's add two more properties here. Let's say the two properties are language and then we have section as well. Fine. So then we have the body of the constructor. So you can see here we have 5 properties. 3 of these 5 are inherited from class student and the rest 2 are those properties that we want to add for class student1 exclusively. The syntax for inheritance in classes is not a tough one though. Still we have to keep a few things in mind. Mainly the next statement we are going to write here is an important one. It goes like we use the super keyword and then we'll pass all the properties which we want to inherit from the class. In this particular case, we want to inherit these 3 properties here, right? So we'll copy this from here and we'll paste it here. Remember one thing guys, we'll write only those properties which we want to inherit from other class. Actually this super keyword we used here refers to the parent class. We use it to call the parent class's constructor, or we can also call particular properties and methods with the help of super keyword. Next up, we'll define the 2 new properties, the language and the section now. So the syntax will remain the same. We'll write here this dot language is equals to language and then we'll write this dot section is equal to section. We are good to go now. We'll create an object for this class as well, which is student1. So let's say we are creating an object again. Let's say the name of this object is, let's remove it first. So let's say we are creating an object for this class now. Let's say the name of this object is Arun and we are going to write here new, then we have the class name which is student1, and then we'll pass the values here. So let's say the name is Arun, then we have the age is 35, and then we have roll number as 3 or 2, and then we have the language. So let's say the language is JavaScript, and then we finally have the section as well. So let's say the section is A. Fine. So we have all the 5 values here. We have Arun, 35, 2, JavaScript and A. Right. So let's print this on our console. We'll write here console.log and we'll print Arun. Let's save it now, and here you can see we have a student1 with all the properties and values. We have age is 35, language JavaScript, name is Arun, roll number is 2, and section is A. If we click here on __ proto, you can see here we have a constructor student1. Along with that, we have all the methods of the previous class, of the base class. We have org, we have dob as well, right? So this is how inheritance work in JavaScript. The key benefit of using inheritance with classes is that, if we remember from the previous video, if we want to access any base class method, then traditionally we had to manually provide the constructor, right? But in classes, we don't have to do any such thing. Once we are done with inheriting the properties and all, we can directly access the methods as well. Let's try to do it here on a console. So we'll write here Arun dot, let's suppose we are using org. So we'll write here arun.org, and here you can see we have the output as I am Arun from SimpliCode. Next up, let's use the other method as well. So we'll write here Arun, and then we'll use dob. So here you can see we have the date of birth of Arun is 1985, because we have provided the value as 35. So 2020 minus 35 is 1985. Here we have the output as expected. Now let's see if we can access the static method or not by using the derived class. So we'll try to access the static method with the help of student1. So let's try to do it. We'll write here console.log, and then we'll write here student1.add, and we'll pass the values. Let's say the values are 65 and 8, right? So we want the output as 73 now. So let's see if it's working or not. So we'll save it, and here you can see we have the output as 73. So this is a basic example of how inheritance works with classes in JavaScript.
So that wraps today's session on JavaScript. We hope you had a lot to learn and will be on the lookout for any suggestion or doubts in the comment section below. So if you have any queries, you know what to do. Hope to catch you guys back in the next part. Thank you so much for being here today. Stay tuned to SimpliCode and keep coding.